Hello, my name is Winslaya and welcome to my video going over the new signature skills that were just introduced into Age of Wonders 4 with the latest DLC, Thrones of Blood. Thrones of Blood gave us a new ruler type, and similar to Giant Kings and Eldritch Sovereigns, these new rulers have special, very powerful signature skills that they get at level 4, level 8, level 12, and level 16. I will note at the beginning of this video that there is a way to get access to heroes that have those special signature skills when you go through the new Lost Soul quest lines. For example, if you defeat the Headless Victim or the Headless Horseman hero, you can animate their body, which will give you the ability to have things like the Nightsworn signature skill and other powerful signature skills on heroes. Generally speaking, these appear to be intended to go on just one unit, your ruler unit, but you can, as you can see here, get access to either Hemomancer, Nightsworn, Dreadful, or Desecrator at level 4 on this hero unit. And if we go back to my ruler, we will see that we can get access to even more special, very powerful signature skills when we get to the other thresholds, which are, as I mentioned earlier, level 4 is one of them. Then we have these options at level 8. I really like the Profane Body Mastery. And then at this option, we have these options. And out of these options, I want to say Exsanguinate is one of the best ones here. And at level 16, we have not just these 4 options that are highlighted, but a total of 9 options that depend on what you picked on earlier levels. For example, since we took Exsanguinate at level 12, we can get an upgraded Exsanguinate here at level 16. These 3 other options, Supernatural Speed, Rosebound Noble, and Curse of the Undeath, are just generally available to any vampire ruler when they get to level 16, but there is a 4th option that you get to pick based off of your previous choices. In this video, we're going to dive deeply into all of these options, and then at the end of the video, what we're going to do is we're going to go through this combat. We're going to let the auto combat do its best, and we're just going to watch and observe and comment on why the specific signature skills that I picked worked well in this combat. This is going to be a pretty tricky one. It's got a level 1 hero, sure, but with really good gear, and a tier 5 unit. The Fallen Angel is very powerful. A tier 4 unit, so that's pretty powerful. And of course, these tier 2s are not the weakest units in the game. They're fairly decent. And yeah, without further ado, let's take a closer look at the level 4 signature skills that this new ruler type has access to. I've been hearing online that people really like Hemomancer. This is one that I overlooked initially because I don't like dealing damage to my own ruler in exchange for a benefit like extra damage. But when you look at the numbers, it kind of makes sense. Getting extra plus 50% damage works really well on certain classes. The Warlock isn't known for dealing damage as much as, say, the Warrior, so I think there's definitely certain classes that benefit more from the Hemomancer signature skill. But this one is going to definitely not be as useful on classes like the Ritualist or the Warlock as it would be on, say, the Warrior or even the Elementalist, which is somebody who's known for dealing a lot of damage from far away. The Nightsworn signature skill is one that conjures in a unit, and those units can be spawned in on water combats, which means it's generally going to be easier to get benefit out of the Doombat when you compare it to, say, Desecrator. Desecrator will spawn in a zombie, but that doesn't work on water combats. But I really like this Dark Sacrament ability being a leave 1 action. This is the one that I generally have been putting on my new Elder Vampire rulers because it lets them do something after dealing a fair bit of damage in a 2 hex radius. You get access to this pretty early in the game, and it's pretty easy to get a lot of benefit out of it. The fact that it's only cooldown 1 makes it really, really powerful and really useful in shorter fights or even longer fights. You can just keep using it over and over and over again to apply Diseased, which is a very powerful debuff. Making it so an enemy has -4 resistance means that they're just going to take a lot more magic damage from your units. Now, we didn't take a close look at the Bat Swarm main ability, which is going to be a free action, does 8 damage, and can inflict blind in a area. Adjacent enemies can be blinded basically and take a tiny little bit of damage. The nice thing is because this is a debuff melee attack, it can apply other things like misfortune or weakening. Like this Fated Magic has the chance to apply misfortune on magic attacks and debuff attacks because the Bat Swarm is a debuff attack that can inflict a lot of other additional status effects other than what you see here on the main tag. Dreadful is something that inflicts Torment on a single enemy unit. Torment will make it so that when a unit uses an ability, it takes frost damage, loses morale, and that can stack up to 5 times, meaning that they can take 8 times 5 is 40 frost damage. That's a lot of frost damage for taking a few actions. Of course, you can't take 5 actions in a turn, but that adds up. And the fact that it counters Grace is pretty significant. Grace is a pretty powerful buff, which heals a unit when it is damaged. So Torment, it's generally very powerful and easy to get value out of. The status vulnerability is not nothing. The fact that it makes it so that it's easier to apply statuses like Misfortune can add up to get a lot of value very, very quickly. And then the fact that you're taking away morale makes it so that enemies are going to not get extra crit chance from high morale, and they're more likely to fumble their own attacks and eventually potentially even run away from the combat. There's also a lot of interactions that allow you to do things to units with low morale. Like I want to say somewhere in one of these paths, you can mind control enemies that have low morale. So let's see. I think we've basically covered everything here at the first signature skill, the ones you get at level 4. It is worth noting that each of these will increase the upkeep of your ruler by 10 gold, meaning you'll have access to less gold for other units, but that's a pretty good trade-off compared when you consider the fact that these signature skills are more powerful than what general heroes usually get access to. Like if we just close this down, we can go over to one of my other heroes. This guy has the ability to just kind of boost up HP by 10 points on all of the supporting units. So when you compare that to what the new ruler type does, this is focused on the ruler itself versus making the other units in the army more powerful. I think we'll take, like I said earlier, Desecrator is my favorite. Hemomancer is probably a close second. And then when we take a look here at level 8, we get access to Nightlord, Reaper, Vampiric Rage, Profane Body Mastery is my favorite, Marrow Drinker, and then Defiler is the 6th option you get at this level of signature skills. Let's start with my favorite. Profane Body Mastery will make it so that your unit has very fast movement, extra evasion, and 20 hit points. The extra evasion is really, really nice because that means that you're just less likely to take damage from physical ranged and magic attacks. You're just going to either take no damage or less damage when the enemy grazes those accuracy checks, which is pretty significant. But I think the best part of this signature skill is the very fast movement. It gives you extra movement on the world map. You can get to other fights more easily. You can get to spaces where your hero can heal more easily. But also, additionally, when you're in combat, you can move another hex, which adds up to be pretty significant. That means that you can get your hero to safety more easily if you need to do that, or you can make it so that they can get an attack they otherwise wouldn't be able to. I think this pairs really, really nicely with the Desecrator's ability to explode a enemy corpse, or any corpse really, to deal damage to just enemies. The fact that this only affects enemies is actually pretty significant, and something I should have highlighted a little bit earlier. Now let's just go back to the top of this list and go through these one by one. We have Nightlord, which says this unit is immune to blind. When in Sunless, Underground, or Gloom, this unit does 20% damage and has natural regeneration. That's significant. There's also the fact that once you get to this level, you get access to things like Blink and Unholy Leader. If we look at all of the level 8 signature skills, all of them give you access to Unholy Leader. And one of the other options I believe that you can get when you're playing a general hero or a champion ruler or even a Wizard King ruler, I think gets access to a lot of these. Although I don't recognize Scarlet Plague, I'm going to say that's something that you should get access to based off the fact that I know Blink is something that is available to other units. Wail of the Banshee's interesting. It works really well with a lot of things that are in this DLC. But yeah, let's not get away from the signature skills too much in this video. I really want to focus on the signature skills themselves. Being immune to blind means that you counter the Tome of Shades pretty effectively. They get extra benefits when units are blinded. They deal extra damage to units that are blinded, or rather they bypass their defenses, which allow them to do extra damage. And it's also very easy to apply blind if you have the Tome of Shade. That's something that will be very, very useful when you're trying to counter certain other players who are playing that specific tome path. It's a pretty popular tome, so if you see somebody going for it, you may want Nightlord over Profane Body Mastery, but I still think you might prefer Profane Body Mastery just because it's easier to get value, not just against a player, but also against farming the map. That extra damage is probably the best part here, and then the natural regeneration will allow them to heal HP in combat. I want to say that all vampire rulers, they heal up yes, at the end of a combat, which is pretty helpful. And once they get into friendly terrain, they generally heal up to their HP a little bit faster. But I'm not seeing that in the list of tags. That might be coming from the fact that I usually like to take the things that make it so that units heal a little bit more at the end of your strategic turns. Now we have Reaper, which says when you kill enemies, active cooldowns are reduced by 1. They're not just reset, but they're reduced by 1, which is pretty significant. And getting extra HP on your hero is going to add up. If you are able to kill a lot of units with your hero, that'll make it really hard for the enemy to remove this unit from the battlefield. Pretty significant, but I want to say there's something in the dark culture that is just as powerful, if not more powerful, based off of one of my multiplayer games that I did recently. Zombie was basically getting, I think, 5 HP for every one of his units that died in the combat, which made it so that his Giant King had like 250 HP, and it was just impossible to whittle down. And then, he had a bunch of cheap units that he could throw away, so it was very easy for him to get value out of that interaction. Vampiric Rage says that damage increases as hit points are lowered up to 50% at 1 HP. So if he's at 1 HP, they deal a lot more damage. I want to say that should pair really, really well with the Hemo something rather, at level 1, because that will just make it so that your unit can deal a lot of damage as so long as they're not removed from the battlefield. One thing I will say about the vampire rulers that I find a little bit tricky to work around is they can't get access to Keeper's Mark. That's one of my favorite things that you can get off of a signature skill. It's like the Unholy Leader, but since we have Unholy Leader in all of these places, and I want to say none of these look like they're order affinity related, you don't have access to that very powerful interaction that keeps your ruler going one extra turn longer. Of course, it makes your unit pacified and steadfast, but it also pacified is something that you can remove pretty easily, and having access to your spells for another turn in combat can allow you to keep your ruler alive through a number of different strategies. Like you can kill off all the enemy units, or you can place warding on them, which will keep them alive an additional turn longer because they're just invulnerable to damage. Next, we have Marrow Drinker, which inflicts 3 bleeding for 3 turns on any attacks. Any attacks you take will inflict bleeding for 3 turns. And I want to say when it says increased for single shots, that means that it will inflict not just 1 bleeding, but 2 bleeding. That's what I want to say this means. And then when enemies suffer damage from bleeding, you gain 2 temporary HP is something that can add up to heal your unit quite a significant amount. But I have to imagine in general, this one is one of the worst signature skills because it's harder to get value out of. Of course, I could be wrong, and I encourage people to let me know in the comment section below if they disagree with any of my assessments of these signature skills. But I want to say Marrow Drinker is just one of the worst signature skills, not just at this level, but out of all the new signature skills. Defiler says that it will remove 1 positive stats effect when you take attacks. Single shot attacks remove 2 positive stats effects is something that is really, really good because that can remove steadfast. If somebody is using Keeper's Mark and they have steadfast their unit, then taking that away means you can remove them from the battlefield 1 turn earlier. But I want to say that you can't get rid of the warded effect that comes from a spell using this removal. Generally pretty good, I would say, but not gonna allow you to farm the map nearly as efficiently as Profane Body Mastery. Next, we have the skills you get at level 12, which are Blood Communion, Exsanguinate, Bloodblight, Tormenting Mist, Festering Spine, and Gravemarch. Out of all of these, Exsanguinate is my favorite because it deals a lot of damage from far away. This damage will ignore 50% of the target's defenses and resistance, meaning you're going to have an easier time just dealing damage to targets in the game. Of course, if they have low armor or resistance, then it won't come into play as much, but you'll still be able to remove like those tier 1 and tier units pretty easily without the ignoring of their defenses and resistance. The fact that it gives bleeding is pretty nice, and I want to say the burning, increased accuracy, and Mire Crocodile boon might be coming from some of my gear. I'm convinced that the Mire Crocodile boon is coming from my gear or the fact that I completed a quest earlier. So I want to say those aren't nearly as significant. In fact, let's just take a second. We'll confirm this. We'll go to my gear and see if I remove. I can't remove this. I want to say that I'm not getting the burning from any other source that I can see. So yeah, it might be that Exsanguinate actually applies burning in general, which is not nothing. I'm not really sure why it would apply burning, but I'm going to assume that it does at this point. This increases the gold upkeep by 10, and I want to say we didn't have anything like that at the last level, right? It wasn't looking that closely, so let's just take a second to make sure I'm not missing anything. Profane Body Mastery doesn't increase the upkeep of your hero unit. It just gives you really, really nice modifiers that make your hero better for no cost. But yeah, at Exsanguinate, upkeep increases by 20 gold. Same with any of these signature skills at level 12. All of them are going to increase your upkeep by an additional 20 gold on top of the 10 gold that you were paying at level 4. Blood Communions as that basically the target friendly unit and the caster heal 20 HP and have 2 negative status effects. It's a free action on cooldown 2. That is pretty powerful. That actually is one of the signature skills that I would rank closely to Exsanguinate, but I feel like generally it's more useful to deal more damage than it is to heal your own units and remove status effects. But in certain situations, this will have more value than Exsanguinate. If you're playing against somebody who applies a lot of negative status effects, like say Misfortune or Weekend or Remorse, removing those status effects can be pretty significant and help keep your units fighting a little bit longer. But you know, there's a lot of value in just removing enemies from the battlefield. So generally speaking, dealing damage is better. Bloodblight is going to make it so that target enemy unit and 2 others within 2 hexes take this 10 damage. They get 3 blood parasite for 3 turns. And this is a leave 1 action. This means that your turn isn't over when you use this ability. The blood parasite is going to make it so that the unit sustains 4 physical damage each turn. And when it says it replaces bleeding, it means that if you apply bleeding to units that have the blood parasite, then they're going to get more stacks of the blood parasite. On death, this will spawn a blood maggot under the control of the opponent, meaning basically when you kill units that you applied blood parasite to, you're going to get an extra unit on the battlefield. This guy isn't that powerful by himself, but if you have enough of them on the battlefield, it'll make it harder for your enemy to attack your actual units, your real units that you get to keep in between fights. This can consume corpses getting strengthened and getting the ability to make it so that Parasitic Bloat does 5 extra damage. Parasitic Bloat is just disappeared on me. I need to pull that back up. Parasitic Bloat is somewhere in here, right? Gains bloated, increasing the damage of Parasitic Bloat. When this unit dies, adjacent enemies take physical damage and have a chance of gaining blood parasite. So this can kind of have a cascading effect, right? That's a really neat interaction with the blood maggot unit. All right, we're ready to look at Tormenting Mist, which says enemies within 2 hexes sustain damage, lose morale, take 4 stacks of Torment. We looked at Torment earlier, and once again, this is another leave 1 action similar to the Desecrator. That means that it won't end your turn and you can take other actions after using this ability. Still, I like Exsanguinate. It might be a full action, meaning you can't move forward and use it. But the fact that this is 6 range is pretty significant. It'll keep your unit far away from the battlefield, whereas this has to be used closer to the enemy units. It's only 4 range, and this one is for adjacent units. This can only make it so that units, or rather units within 2 hexes of your ruler, will have these modifiers applied to them, meaning you have to get very, very close to the enemy. You have to get closer than you would with Bloodblight to apply what is arguably better, but it puts your hero in more danger. This is cooldown 3, this is cooldown 3, this is cooldown 2, and this is cooldown 2. It's always worth noting that the cooldowns on these abilities, because if you can't use it as often, you can't get as much value out of that skill in particular, at least generally speaking. Festering Spine is a single action attack that can target 4 hexes away, meaning you can move pretty far forward and then attack a unit for a lot of damage. 40 blight damage is a significant amount of damage. It also applies 4 stacks of poisoned and 2 stacks of decaying. The decaying is one of my favorite debuffs in the game, making it so that healing is going to apply less healing, means that it'll be easier to remove enemy units from the battlefield. It also counters regeneration, which is something that allows units to keep fighting longer. If they're able to heal a little bit at the end of each turn, then it's going to be a lot harder to remove them. And honestly, if you get 5 stacks of regeneration, they're not just healing a little bit, they're healing 30 HP from this one source every turn. And some builds can get access to a lot of regeneration and make it so that most of their units have 5 stacks of regeneration at the end of their turns. All right, we also have, this is inflicting burning. The burning must be coming from another source, like my culture or something like that, right? I'm not seeing why it's applying so much burning. But yeah, if anyone else knows who's watching this video, please feel free to leave a comment about it. I want to make sure that this video is describing what you get from these signature skills clearly, or that kind of information is clear to the viewer. Gravemarch makes it so that you can conjure a bunch of tier 1 thorn skeletons using corpses. It will conjure 4 corpses of tier... No, it doesn't use corpses. It conjures in the corpses in a 1 hex radius. I think I've heard people say that's not that significant once you get to the level 12 signature skills. At that point in the game, tier 1 units aren't going to be nearly as useful unless you have, for example, Mighty Meek. Then those units will be able to deal more damage to higher tier units, but they're still going to get removed from the battlefield fairly quickly. This also says for the next 4 turns, it will resurrect 1 random corpse on the battlefield under your control until the end of combat. So that resurrecting might target thorn skeletons, or it might target enemy units or your own units to bring them back, and that means that you'll have it'll be a lot harder for the enemy to just generally defeat you over longer battles. If they're able to defeat you in a few turns, then you're not going to be able to get as much value out of this interaction. The fact that it's cooldown 5 really comes from the fact that this is something that takes a lot of time to get a lot of value out of, but when you can get a lot of value out of it, Gravemarch is a pretty significant signature skill. Although I would still say Exsanguinate is easier to get value out of for just clearing the map in general. So I prefer it, but I can actually see how Gravemarch would be better in specific combats against another player where the combat could have been generally very close, but just having a few extra units is going to make it so that they have more actions that they have to focus on just clearing the battlefield, and eventually you'll just have more action point economy than they will. So let's move on to the last set of options, which is Supernatural Speed, Violent Exsanguination, Rosebound Noble, Curse of Undeath, Parasitic Communion, Spreading Blight, or Torment, Miasma Spine, and Elite March. We'll go over the general ones first. I've been hearing that Supernatural Speed is very powerful. Being able to use a free action teleport that is only on 1 cooldown will make it so that you can get away from enemies that are chasing down your ruler pretty efficiently. And if you want to get your ruler into a position to deal a lot of damage, it's a lot easier to do that. The exceptional speed part is also pretty significant because it makes this unit and all turned vampires have the very fast movement tag when not mounted. And if the Elder Vampire has Profane Body Mastery, which gives very fast movement, they get a additional effect instead of the very fast movement. They can get extra crit chance even when they are mounted. So it makes it so that they can move very far and deal a lot of damage instead of just being able to move very far. We have Rosebound Noble next, which is one I'm a pretty big fan of because it gives you access to a tier 4 unit that you don't have to have in your armies. It just summons it in, and then it's available to you for the rest of that combat until they die at the very least. And since this is an undead unit, you can resurrect them and keep them in the battle through that interaction. It has Curse of Rose command. While this unit is in combat, all friendly undead units have Razor Thorns. Really cool. Melee attackers get bleeding, which has really cool interactions with other things that were introduced in this DLC. It has a very nice powerful attack. Enemy units in 2x radius will sustain 20 damage, sustain 5 physical damage per stack of bleeding, and for each bleeding heal this unit 10 HP. And it, of course, has a charge strike, which is pretty significant. You also gain the ability to just draft Rose Knights. If you have this interaction, you don't have to get them through one of the new tomes. I can't remember which one gives you access to this undead unit type, but I'm pretty sure it comes into play in one of the new tomes. Of course, there's these other things that are tied to the signature skills. I know Ancient One is a pretty powerful signature skill that has been in the game for a while. Being able to just deal 20% extra damage from a point is significant and not worth overlooking. I want to say Eternal One is also very significant. When this hero is killed in battle, after 2 turns, it comes back to life with 35% of its hit points. Yeah, that makes it so that you can, I want to say, like, continue using spells. If your ruler dies and they have that interaction, you can continue using spells after they're resurrected. The Curse of Undeath will make it so enemy units in a 2-hex radius become soulbound until the end of the combat, and they sustain damage. This is another ability that leaves you with 1 action, meaning you can do more actions after you use this ability. It comes with the Soulbound Anguish, which says at the start of this turn, enemy units with Soulbound sustain 4 frost damage. That can allow you to remove units a little bit faster, and then you can get this Soulbound interaction where you have a chance of spawning in a Decaying Zombie, which is once again another tier 1 unit that benefits a lot from Mighty Meek. So there are some interactions inside this new ruler path that synergizes very well with the Mighty Meek tome. It's actually called Tome of Beacon, I want to say, but I think of it as the Mighty Meek tome. All right. Violent Exsanguination will make it so that Exsanguinate now deals 50% of its damage to adjacent enemies, which ignore 50% of enemy defense and resistance. I want to say that should also carry tags like the Misfortunate on Faded Magic and the Weakening that is attached on Weakening Magic. So that can be a really good way to cascade status effects through more than just a single target, but multiple targets. We have Parasitic Communion, which says Blood Communion now has a 120% chance of inflicting blood parasite for 3 turns to enemies adjacent to the caster and the target. Once again, that can allow you to get a lot more units on the battlefield, which will make it so that the enemy has a harder time of actually attacking your real units that you actually care about. Spreading Blight will make it so Bloodblight now spreads to 4 enemy units within 3 hexes. I think it used to be, or at the lower level, it says right here, it would target this unit and 2 others within 2 hexes. So it can reach not twice as many units, but 2 additional units, and it can spread to units that are slightly further away, 1 hex or further away than what Bloodblight used to be able to target. We have Aurora of Torment, which says at the end of this turn, adjacent enemy units sustain frost damage, lose morale, and gain 1 stack of Torment. I want to say that doesn't seem that powerful, and it's related to Tormenting Mist, which is something that gives you a lot of torment, reduces morale. So I want to say that if you really lean into morale builds, that you can get some good value out of this one, but it doesn't seem as good to me when I compare it to some of the other things that we've looked at today. Miasmic Spine says when Festering Spine kills a unit, all enemy units in a 2-hex radius gain 5 poisoned and 4 decaying for 3 turns. Yeah, this is the one that I mentioned liking because it deals quite a bit of damage and you can move fairly far forward. The one thing about this is you have to kill an enemy unit to get good value out of the level 16 signature skill Miasmic Spine. But I want to say that if you can get that to work, you're going to have a lot easier time clearing up the remaining units. 5 stacks of poisoned is a lot of damage each turn. 5 times 4 is 20 damage each turn to those units, and those units will not be able to heal if they have 4 stacks of decaying on them. Of course, you might just be removing regeneration with the decaying, but that is fairly valuable in general. Being able to make it so they can't regenerate is fairly valuable. Gravemarch now conjures the bodies of tier 3 and tier 4 undead units and has its cooldown reduced by 2. So let's go back to Gravemarch. This one says for the next 4 turns, resurrect 1 random corpse on the battlefield under your control. I didn't see that it was limited to only lower tier units when I was reading Gravemarch earlier, and I'm not very familiar with this one. But it's saying that Gravemarch now conjures the bodies of tier 4 and tier 3 units, meaning it not just resurrects undead ones. I think it's saying that it can bring them into the battlefield. All right, so I think we're ready to select these skills, and we will go into that combat. Let's just take a second to build out our hero the way I had it. I'd like this skill, this skill, this skill. We'll take that, and Hex Pack is really good, so why not take that again? You still have 9 points to play around with. I'm pretty sure I had this, and this earlier. Wow, what did I have? Yeah, I remember we had this, and we'll just come down here and grab. Right. Now I remember I had made it so that we could get access to Curse. Curse is not terrible, but I'm sure that I can get better skills if I focus a little bit more time on thinking about this. So yeah, let's just get into this combat here and see how they do. No losses. Very good. Now we will watch replay. And hopefully I don't miss anything important as the AI is taking his turns. I love this map. It's really cool the way these rose vines spread across the map. Of course, they want to apply some status effects, and since this guy did it early in the turn, he's fairly far away from the combat. You're freezing my tier 1 zombie that I summoned in. Great. Don't hurt my real units. Perfect. It's all according to plan. So Soul Overflow, very nice, very good spell. Removes all negative status effects. All right. Well, that seemed pretty lackluster. What was that ability? Was that Curse? Might have been Curse. These new Paybringer units are using their ranged attack, which is a pretty good one. Okay, I guess you can bring back the zombie. Sure. Oh yeah, give the Dragon Draconic Rage. Really smart. Yeah, we have 3 zombies here, don't we? That's cool. I'll take it. No, leave my hero alone. I think that's fine because the hero can heal a bit using the special Siphon Blood ability. Oh, it doesn't even need it. Well, maybe he will. Well, this guy's dead, isn't he? I remember I didn't lose any units. Why is this guy so far forward? He's a valuable unit. He's a legend rank. He's a legend. Okay. Good job, AI. You hurt my unit that's far away from the rest of your units. And at this point, there isn't that many units that I'm worried about. It's just this tier 5 that's scary. Yeah, removing the enemy dragon early is pretty valuable. Not sure why he ran next to this unit. Seems strange. Flanking, very cool. Looks like we're getting him. I was going to say this turn, but now I'm looking at it and thinking, am I removing that unit this turn? What's he going to do? Oh, right. This guy, he can't use his main attack when he's in zone of control. So actually standing next to him is a good thing. Good job, Ruler. Forget what I said. You're perfect the way you are. Ooh, getting close on this guy. Yeah, I like the healing this Light Spirit has access to. That's a big heal. That was his champion heal. It got leveled up. He also has this one. It's on cooldown too. There goes the tier 5. You run from my zombies. You need to. Well, that was easy. Cool. Yeah, that's everything I wanted to go over in this video. I don't think I mentioned earlier that I did a video on the Lost Soul quest lines earlier, and I also did 10 tips 2 weeks ago, so please feel free to check out those videos, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.